Hello gamers, Aaron Shack here, and I have a build for the Mighty Thor here. We're calling this the Cosmic Might of Mjolnir build because it's going to have a lot to do with cosmic energy and of course his handy hammer, Mjolnir. Let's take a look. Alright gamers, let's take a look at Thor's skill tree and make sure we understand the basics of playing as Thor. So we have Midgard's Finest, which is square 4 times. That's the light combo finisher. Keep that in mind because the current gauntlets I'm using does cosmic damage at the end of the light combo finisher. So it's important to keep what moves do what type of damage. So that's really cool. Signature attack is really important. Hammer spin, whirling Uru, Mjolnir Cyclone. So that's really a 3-step move here of just holding square 3 times. So hold square, and then hold square a 3rd time. And keep in mind that during that move, you can actually meter burn Odin Force. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. We have the Sledgehammer, which is a sprinting attack, and then we have Slide Smash, which is a dodge attack. So sprint, press square, pretty simple. Dodge, then press square. This actually spins the enemy, makes him really vulnerable. And then you have Skyfire, which is a light attack combo in the air, which actually slams enemies to the ground when you're done. So that 3rd hit is really powerful. Then you have the Star Heart Slam, which is also a signature attack. So one thing I want to point out about that is, let's say you had these, the Hive Mind Gauntlets here. And see, these will make your signature attacks do particle damage. And so that means if this is also a signature attack, look at that. That also does particle damage. So that's pretty cool. But I'm sticking with this one right now. And let's go ahead and get some enemies in just to kind of showcase some of our moves. You have a heavy attack combo called the Hammer Slash. There's just triangle 3 times. You have the Sigurd Strike, which is the heavy combo finisher. Square 3 times and then triangle. And don't forget, you can meter burn that by pressing R2 at the end to add some Odin Force to it. And holding triangle, this one's very important because it's going to do cosmic damage, in our case, based on the gear I'm using here. It breaks through blocks and sends out a shockwave that does heavy damage. Now don't forget, you can also press R2 to meter burn that with Odin Force. The Air Lunge is really great for attacking enemies in midair because it actually kind of seeks towards the enemy. Notice how the enemy's kind of like upward and a little far away. So Thor will sort of automatically seek the nearest enemy when doing that. And you can really get that combo out and just, of course, it incrementally increases in damage there. If you hold triangle in midair, you'll do the Falling Star attack, which is also a power attack. So that means it's going to do cosmic damage, in this case, with the gear that I have. You can also hold R2 to meter burn it. And as far as our ranged attacks go, you can charge up Tornado Throw and throw it. You also have the option to do a headbutt here called Headstrong. When the hammer has been thrown, you just hold square and you can headbutt. It breaks shields, which is pretty cool. You can press triangle to recall the hammer and do a quick little uppercut there, the Uru uppercut. You can drop the hammer and then press triangle and you'll kind of do the same thing that we did with the Starheart Slam, except you're calling the hammer to you immediately. And it does impact damage there. Then while sprinting, you can also call the hammer back with triangle if you don't have the hammer on you. And then you do kind of a flip, and that does launch damage as well, which can be very powerful. So let's kind of showcase some of these basics here and make sure we understand, especially how to use them with some enemies here. We'll do the aerial thing. See, that really hits a good spread. Signature attack is really good. If someone tries to interrupt you, you just press R2 and you make sure to cut them off. There's our power attack. It's our light combo finisher that did cosmic damage. Now throwing the hammer with a power attack does gamma. Pinning enemies does gamma. There's our kind of our basic unarmed attacks there. That's our full combo on that. That's the headbutt. And some more powerful things we can do with the hammer. Throw it, press R2, call down lightning. That can be very powerful. We just did a whole ton of cosmic damage there. We can do our vertical slam, which is very powerful. Call back the hammer. Do that one. So this is a very powerful melee build at this point. And with the Jarvis shield, I really don't have to worry about taking damage here. Pretty cool, huh? So we'll take out this last wave. Here's a really good showcase of how much you can do with calling down the lightning like that. Thor can do a lot of AoE damage with a lot of these attacks, and depending on whether you go for a melee build like this or if you go with a ranged build, you know, you'll be able to do R2 like so and deal lots of AoE damage like that. Now, just looking at a last little bit of statistical stuff here with the intrinsic ability, which is very powerful, right? You want to make sure that you're using Odin Force to counter things, right? So as you can see, we're countering those guys, and we're making sure that they don't interrupt us. See, they boost the strength of all melee attacks with an electrical charge that applies shock damage. So that's always good. Attacking and defeating enemies refunds intrinsic energy, which is great. Increases the max energy, increases the max amount. When it's full, you can perform several attacks in quick succession without sustaining damage to overcharge it. Overcharging intrinsic ability automatically activates Odin Force and keeps it active until taking damage, countering, or ceasing attacks. So that can be very powerful. You can just tank and just keep dealing damage and just making sure that you're not getting hit by doing these parries with it. Reducing the decay rate. These are all things that just make sure that you're able to acquire Odin Force and keep using it. Activating Odin Force while the hammer is pinned to an enemy or the world will radiate a periodic electrical pulse. That's what I was showing earlier, was that you can really do lots of damage with that. Galvanize. If you activate it defensively, it blocks grenades or other projectiles deflecting away. So a lot of people don't think of that. They don't really think that Thor can do this. They kind of think of it with Captain America and maybe with other characters, you know, that have shields or a way to reflect bullets back towards the enemy. No, you can once again do the same thing with Thor. Hey gamers, if you're finding this video helpful or informative, please give us a like. Much appreciated. Alright, so looking at Thor's specialty skill tree, his support heroic is Warrior's Fury. It supercharges Odin Force ability beyond its normal limits, automatically arcs electricity out to nearby enemies, imbues all attacks with lightning, and grants a period of invulnerability for all nearby team members when activated. So it breaks block, does medium damage, high impact, low stun, and it does stagger enemies. So now you can choose. Nearby teammates receive temporary damage boost of 25%. I do that because usually when I'm playing as Thor, I'm usually trying to be a real team player here and make sure that everybody's getting a big boost of damage there. You could potentially revive down teammates. That's useful as well. You could also allow nearby teammates to recover 10 willpower every 3 seconds. But usually when I'm doing Warrior's Fury, I mean, we're usually trying to deal some damage as a team. I'm not necessarily having to be the healer, but you have that option if you want. So on this side, you have enemies defeated with Warrior's Fury is active, have a 50% chance to drop a heroic orb. Well, here you have the ability to increase critical attack damage by 25% and critical attack chance by 10% of anyone affected by Warrior's Fury. That's pretty powerful. You could also give nearby teammates an intermittent intrinsic energy boost of 20% while Warrior's Fury is active. I just think this is better because I can just try to do as many critical attacks as possible during that time. So now we look at the Assault Heroic, which is God Blast. This is a real quick way to just shoot out a big blast of lightning here. It lifts the enemies into the air, and then you deal some major shock damage. Which with my build, you can see my heroic ability here is at 9379 here. So that means it's going to deal a ton of damage. You can hold up to 3 charges of God Blast with this. The ability charges faster than normal, but enemies are not lifted into the air. So that is a personal choice. That's if you want that. If you just want to deal the lightning damage and get it done quickly, and you want to have 3 charges of it, that's cool. But sometimes it's nice to have that sort of whirlwind that lifts the enemies into the air. It can buy you some time and some breathing room. God Blast Whirlwind inflicts 20% more damage and applies cryo damage to targets caught in swirling vortexes. I found this to be a little more helpful than simply being able to do God Blast more frequently. I usually get my heroics back fairly frequently anyway, so this is just kind of buffing it here. Enemies caught in the God Blast Whirlwind have a 33% chance to drop regen packs. Like I said, I'm usually getting takedowns to regenerate health. You know, I'm usually getting health from other means. I'm not necessarily having to play healer here, but there is potential to build sort of a healer type build for Thor if you and your team are really struggling to stay alive. But I would recommend dealing more damage, right? So now in this one, God Blast inflicts 15% increased normal and stun damage against shocked enemies. So that can be pretty powerful. But I chose God Blast inflicts 20% increased damage when triggered while overcharged. So that's just going to deal even more damage. So I mean, this could be really cool. But man, if you're overcharged and then being overcharged, just to be clear here, that's when your Odin Force, let's see if they have, I don't know if they have like a perk that necessarily, it doesn't like show a little video. But yeah, essentially your intrinsic meter would be like really glowing and full. And that's what that looks like. So that can be very powerful. Alright, so now with the ultimate heroic ability, you're able to activate the Bifrost. And you can choose where you want to return by moving around the sigil there. And of course, you want to wait until it hits the 3 times buff and it turns red. So the red indicator here. Boom, right there. Perfect. Okay. So, you can change up the Bifrost. You can do Jotunheim's Tempest, which creates an icy explosion that deals a massive amount of cryostatus damage, slowing any enemies afflicted by the effect. So this can be powerful, and it can be useful depending on how you like to play. Personally, I like this one. This does a circular hazardous zone of burning embers at the impact point, just this massive radius of flames, and does burn damage to all enemies in the radius. I feel like this does massive damage, and it also knocks those enemies down in the same way the cryo does, and I can just get in there and destroy everybody. Plus, you can see it took out these enemies' shields. Now, if you really need healing, if you want to be a healing Thor, and this can be useful in its own way, of course you're dealing a little bit of damage on the initial teleportation impact of both departing and returning. But then here you'll have this beautiful spherical rainbow colored aura here of healing that restores 10% of willpower per second to all team members. So that can be very powerful. Over here you have invigorating Bifrost. Heroic orbs restore an additional 5% of ultimate heroic energy. That can be very powerful. Automatically recovers 50% of your maximum willpower when returning from the Bifrost. So if you're using the Bifrost as like, sometimes I use it this way as like, it's sort of a retreat for me. If I'm about to be killed or something, or if a boss is really pummeling me, I can use it as a last ditch effort to like teleport out and then come back in. So maybe I don't need this anymore. Looking at the next one here, automatically activate Odin Force Overcharge when returning from the Bifrost. So that could be really cool, because then that means you could potentially pair it with this here, because you would for sure have that. So I think this makes more sense with the build I'm going for. But yeah, I've definitely used this perk here for the longest time, and I've found it very useful. But I think my Thor is at a very powerful point in gameplay that he really doesn't need... I don't need the willpower recovery. I can get it from other sources. So that is a look at our specialty tree. Hey gamers, if you're finding this video helpful or informative, please give us a like. Much appreciated. Alright, now we're into the mastery tree. So let's take a look at combat here. You have increased melee stun damage by 15%. Since I love to do takedowns, I love to get as much stun damage going as possible, so I kind of enjoy that. You could definitely go for the increase of ranged attack damage, as I showed you earlier. If you're going to be throwing the hammer and then triggering the lightning, like so with the power of Uru here, that's extra range damage right there. So you can create a very powerful range build. I've actually done that on PC. But here on the PS5, I'm playing around with more of a melee build here. Light and heavy attacks boost the energy of all heroic ability meters by 1.5% for light attacks and 2% for heavy. That's cool and all, but I feel like that's gonna take a while. So I feel like you need to make a choice. Do you want to be melee or do you want to be ranged? And that can balance out your build as well. So you can choose whatever you find more helpful. You can increase the damage of unarmed attacks by 15%. You can increase the crit attack damage when air juggling enemies, which I'm actually kind of bad at that. But if you are good at that, as you can tell, critical attack damage is so important if you want to really do massive amounts of damage. You can increase the damage from combo finishers by 25%. I think that might be more useful. I'm not really doing unarmed attacks as much, and I love doing lots of combo finishers with pretty much all of my characters. Over here, takedowns, you can have them drop regen packs, heroic orbs, or intrinsic energy. Wait, did I say that right? A regen pack, heroic orbs, or takedowns recover a bonus 15% willpower. Okay, so let's go with this. So with the ranged, hold R2 to charge tornado throw and cause the hammer to spawn a series of lightning explosions on impact, but disables the ability to pin. So that's the only reason I haven't really fallen in love with this one per se. Plus, it kind of knocks the enemies far away. And then that makes it to where, like, if I want to go get combos or take advantage of my meter being full, then, I'm going to have to go chase down these enemies separately. With manual targeting, this one's really fun because it sort of simulates Captain America's shield throw. The way that you could just sort of lock on to several enemies and then his shield will bounce around and hit them. This is really cool. But once again, you can't pin combatants. This one right here, holding R2 when and then releasing precisely when the hammer flashes to guarantee the throw inflicts 20% increased critical attack damage, requires Tornado Throw to be unlocked. So Tornado Throw is one of the... Yeah, right there. And so when you're... All they're asking is that as soon as the hammer starts to glow, you can throw it. It's a pretty simple payoff there, I believe. So I chose that one. Because that critical attack damage, I feel like that's easier than juggling enemies. So, on to the next thing. Increases the chance that the hammer will inflict critical attacks on return flight by 35%. That's very powerful. You can increase the throw and recall speed by 15%. But I've never felt like... I've just gotten used to the general speed of the hammer. I like this one. Because range attacks with the hammer break through blocking enemies. I love having an option to quickly get through enemy shields and break through them. And so the hammer is kind of my scapegoat on that. But it would also be very powerful to get these extra critical attacks on a return flight. So that is personal preference at that point. Extended flight here is really cool. It generates an electrical charge. So you'll notice he'll get sort of an electrical field around him as he's flying. And then once you land, it kind of does a shockwave like a lot of your other attacks do. Speed burst, you can hold X while flying, and it uses up Odin Force to give you a little speed burst. That can be really cool. This is just up to you, what you like. With flying shots, you can press circle while flying to shoot out bolts of lightning at nearby enemies. I think of this as sort of like I don't know, like an air raid. You can just like fly down and deal damage, but I just never saw the reason for that. So I always go with the charge flight because it's just yet another way that I can just do like a massive shockwave of damage. All right, for the intrinsic. Defeating enemies while Odin Force is active strikes nearby targets with lightning. So this is very powerful. Dealing damage while Odin Force is active will recover willpower. Once again, if that's something you need, I guess, but I don't recommend it. Defeating enemies while Odin Force is active has a 25% chance to generate regen packs for all team members. Once again, if you really want to be this healer of Asgard here, you can definitely set up a powerful build to do that. With this, increases the maximum amount of intrinsic Odin Force energy by 15%. Performing a perfect dodge grants 30 points of intrinsic Odin Force energy. That can be very powerful. Takedowns grant 30 points of intrinsic Odin Force energy. So since I'm doing takedowns all the time, this is usually what I go with. But this could potentially be good because it sort of extends the bar for Odin Force, which can be very powerful as well. But I'm usually regenerating it quick enough. Reduces the overall energy cost of using the intrinsic Odin Force ability by 10%. Increases the automatic regen speed of intrinsic Odin Force energy by 12%. I think that's powerful because it's even if you're not able to get attacks out, you're recharging. With the Fortitude, reduces the intrinsic Odin Force energy penalty incurred when failing to counter against strong or unblockable attacks by 50%. Listen, these perks can be great when you are a beginner and you are missing your parries and your dodges and stuff like that. And you're not sure what unblockable attacks are, but those are the red arrows. When there's a red arrow above the enemy's head, I don't use this because I recommend that you learn the hard way. You take that damage from your failure, and equip something else, one of these other perks that might be more worth your time. So with the intrinsic overcharge, you have a lot of options here. When overcharged, power attacks generate small electrical hazards. So with my build, this could be really powerful. With the cosmic power attacks that I have. When overcharged, surrounding enemies will be intermittently struck by lightning. So that once again can be very powerful. When overcharged, countering enemy attacks summons an additional lightning bolt with an explosion size increased by 35%. I think this speaks for itself. This is very powerful, like overall. And if you learn how to counter, and all it is pressing R2 at the right time, you can really deal some damage here and really create some area of effect damage. And you can be doing this while you're, like I said, while you're in the middle of a combo. Maybe an enemy's trying to hit you in the back. All you gotta do is hit R2, and you got this massive lightning bolt that comes down. So next thing, increases damage resistance by 50% when Odin Force is overcharged. That can be very powerful. Increases willpower recovery by 2%. So if you're struggling with health, you could do that. Increases heroic energy regeneration when Odin Force is overcharged. So I often switch between these. Sometimes I like to have the damage resistance while I'm overcharged. That way I can just I can take hits and I can just keep tanking away. But it wouldn't be unusual to see me switch this and try to get my heroics back even more than usual. So this is something I'm constantly switching based on what my playstyle is. So I haven't really struggled to stay alive while I've had Odin Force full. I mean, usually if Odin Force is overcharged, it's me at my best. My reflexes are at they're on point. Reflexes are on point. I'm sort of in a flow state while I'm fighting. I'm like, yeah, let's get this. So it just depends. Over here, you have Damage Force. Increases all damage by 15% when Odin Force is overcharged. That can be very powerful. When Odin Force is full, increase the amount of overcharged energy gained on every attack by 20%. So I use this to just keep gaining it back and just keep chaining. And if I don't run out of enemies, I can just keep that Odin Force overcharge energy coming back in. Right here, you have increased the amount of overcharged intrinsic Odin Force energy gained by unarmed attacks by 35%. So this is weird. This just depends on, are you doing an unarmed build? As you can see, there were a few perks here where you could sort of focus on maybe throwing the hammer and then pressing R2 to let the hammer shock people, and then maybe you're off somewhere else punching a dude in the face. Then this could be powerful. That could be a very quick way to get your overcharge energy back. But however, if you're using Odin Force overcharge and the hammer is in your hands, I feel like you want to use Charging Force or potentially Damage Force. But this is just strictly, like, as it says in the name, unarmed force. It's all about that. And so you could potentially gain back more energy quicker, but, unarmed attacks. There you go. So that's kind of it on the mastery tree. That's kind of my best advice for right now for the build that I'm working on. All right, let's take a look at the gear that I currently have. As I was showcasing earlier, light combo finishers and heavy power attacks are dealing cosmic damage. I have a 27.5% chance when hitting an enemy with a melee critical attack to create a tachyon surge. Surges increase all status damage by 50% while active. And then with the hammer, we have pinned enemies take gamma damage, ranged power attacks deal gamma damage, and increased amount of gamma damage done with any attack by 20%. So I chose that, but I do have this one that pins enemies and does cryo damage, and then the ranged power attacks deal cryo, and it also increases the amount of enemies that can be targeted with Mjolnir by 2 targets. And then this one has a perk that I really like. It's called Mjolnir's Sight. So if you ever find this on a hammer, I say set it aside and potentially lock it. Greatly increase Mjolnir's ability to find targets and hit them on any return flight. So when you're calling the hammer back towards you, it's gonna ping pong off enemies, and then you'll be able to grab that. Something I also showcased is something that I'm using on the PC build. Signature attacks deal particle damage, and heavy power attacks do particle damage. So once again, I just showcased that. So signature attacks dealing particle damage. This is the end game here. So that means even on the vertical drop where you hold square or hold triangle, both of those are going to be signature and power attacks. Really covers the full spectrum of Thor's melee abilities. Whereas with the cosmic, the light combo finisher is just hitting square 4 times, and then of course with hitting triangle there and triangle up here. But because signature attacks aren't covered, the vertical drop doesn't do cosmic, and neither does this. So it would actually be better, in my opinion, to not have the light combo finishers deal cosmic damage, but to have that be signature attacks. That's just me. But yeah, there's a lot of choices as far as gear goes on that. With the chest piece, there's a lot of options here. This one has a 17.2% chance when perfect evading incoming attack to activate a Jarvis barrier, protects against damage for 20% of maximum willpower, increases the window of protection granted from an evade by 15%, increases the distance covered during an evade by 30%. This one's also pretty powerful. At least the perks are. I know the ratings up there are looking pretty rough. But increases the rate of heroic energy regeneration while overcharged by 15%. Increases willpower regeneration while overcharged by 200%. So this is an overcharge chest piece here. Like, really built for that. Increase the amount of overcharge energy gained from all attacks by 15%. This one here, just sort of in comparison here. This is actually the exact same thing. and it has worse stats on it. Not really helpful to us in this case, so I'm actually gonna live on video. This one right here has a perk that's different. Increase the duration of the debuff applied to enemies after a successful parry by 3 seconds. So that can be useful, depending on what's going on here. But there are lots of really interesting perks, and as you can see with my current build, this one would be really good as well. If we look at these 3 perks, we've got the Tachyon Surge, we've got 20% extra shock damage, we got the increased amount of willpower recovered from attacking cosmic afflicted enemies by 30%. So that's pretty easy to deal that type of damage. It's impacting my ratings a little bit there in a way that I don't like so much. So maybe I'm still on the hunt for that perfect chess piece, but for now, having my evades being crazy efficient has been helpful. Now with this current gear piece that I have on, 8% chance when defeating enemies to activate a Jarvis barrier, which if I kill a bunch of enemies, I mean, I can almost make that like an 80% chance, Say I kill 10 weak little enemies with 1 ground slam. That's an 80% chance there. Barrier protects against 20% maximum willpower. Increases charge rate of heroic ultimate by 18%. Increases the max energy of the Odin Force meter by 10%. So there's even perks on gear that will increase the Odin Force meter, as well as stuff in your uh, skill tree that you can use for that. So, looking at some belts here, this one further reduces impact resistance applied while debuffed after a successful parry by 50%. Increases the max amount of willpower recovered from attacking cosmic afflicted enemies. So once again, this could be stacked with my current cosmic build, which I might actually do. I might actually equip this, but I really do enjoy that extra boost to the heroic ultimate ability and the Odin Force. The Jarvis barrier is nice, but I mean, unless I want to get like a full Jarvis barrier across this character where it pretty much covers all my health, you know, that would be really useful in some cases. And then of course you can see I have other gear that has Jarvis barriers and heroic ultimate and support recharges and increased damage from power attacks. Everything has a season here, so that's why I'm holding on to a lot of this gear, because obviously this is, you know, a lot of my attacks that are doing cosmic damage are power attacks, and those are really easy to do, and those are massive AoE damage increasers, so that's always good. So this could be really powerful and potentially something that I substitute out here. That could be very useful. As far as artifacts, I'm usually just going for stuff like this one buffs power attacks. This one here increases the charge rate of the heroic assault ability, and I was also just kind of going through these and like seeing which ones were gonna raise my either my melee rating or my ranged rating, because it's kind of nice to have a good balance with Thor. It's kind of nice to be really strong in melee damage, and to also just be able to harness the full strength of the hammer by throwing it and then calling down lightning to deal lots of damage. And so because of that, I chose the Tactagon, because it increases damage on enemies affected by any status, increased status damage from all attacks, which, you know, as you can see, we're doing a lot of shock damage, we're doing a lot of cosmic damage, and when we're throwing the hammer here, we're dealing a lot of gamma damage. That can be very powerful. And I can always sub it out for other ones here, just depending on what I want to do. So this is a very powerful build, and you know, of course the heroics are just ridiculous here. I think we could showcase that here. Obviously it's gonna wreck these guys, but there's our assault ability, which just pretty much decimated everybody. Alright, here's the support. See, I'm hardly doing anything. The lightning strikes that are automatically coming down. And that extra evade distance that I have is really getting me out of trouble here, and really allowing me to avoid taking any damage here. Okay, and then teleporting out here, waiting until it hits ×3, and pretty much everybody's just gonna die. And there it is. I got a Jarvis barrier. You know, you can overcharge everything. Be very powerful. Of course, if you don't have Jarvis barrier, you probably want to dodge out of this stuff really quickly. But yeah, that extra dodge distance, it really makes a difference. So it's just up to you, and also up to me as to whether I want to potentially substitute the extra evasion for something else. Whether I want an overcharge build or if I want something more like this, where I'm gaining back energy and increasing my shock damage, which I'm already doing a lot of shock damage. That could be very powerful. So anyway, I think that's my best like in-depth look at some of Thor's gear here, and I just want to sort of put out the reminder that I really struggled with Thor until I really figured out, until I unlocked more of the skill tree and got more of its attacks and realized that you really do have to press R2 there to counter and parry the attacks here from these enemies. Because otherwise you're going to get interrupted in the middle of your combos, stuff like this. See, like that, I would have been interrupted had I not shocked the enemy like that. So just keep little basic things like that in mind while you're in combat, and I don't think you'll struggle. And that's all for this video. Hopefully you found it helpful or informative. If so, give us a like, and we'll see you on the next one.